Thank you so much for joining today, our fourth and final session of self-attuning to emotional activation. Incredibly grateful for your choice to spend this afternoon or evening with us. My name is Oriana Ides, and I will be holding space for us. Really excited to experience the way we make meaning of and talk about integrating the practices and essence of this series today. I have as a opening gift or offering this beautiful quote that I absolutely love, and in many ways supports the theme of our session today. I'll read it out loud. Accepting ourselves comes from the understanding that life is a dance of opposites. Nature needs the cold fury of winter in order to become the rightest blooming of summer. And I invite you to think about what these words call up for you. What words within this short quote do you gravitate towards, or maybe read over and over again? And what opposing factors dance around in your life, in your world? Invitation to think about that as we enter into today's conversation. Duality, opposition, both and. Invitation is shared in the chat if that feels good. So as I said, today is our final session, the fourth session of self-attuning to our emotional activation. Tending to our own wounds while supporting the healing of others. My name is Oriana Ides, and I'm a field coach with the School Crisis Recovery and Renewal Project. Incredibly excited to do the work that we're doing in finding ways to connect great minds and wisdom, as well as elevate promising practices in the work towards renewal amidst crisis. Today's offering or this series is really about how we are coming into the work that we do as full beings. And the intention with this space is to create space to be our fuller versions of ourselves so that we can show up in the work that we do whole and human, creating the context or space for wholeness and humanity with our young folks. So in the spirit of building accessibility and community, please engage in whichever ways feels most comfortable for you. If we do get into some small groups, which I hope we might do today, we ask that if you can have your camera on or engage in the chat. It creates a deeper sense of safety for folks if you're able to do that. The closed captioning is an option, and you can find that on the toolbar of Zoom. And then if you have any audio or technical issues during our session, you can private chat Nikki, our amazing project director and project manager, and she can support you in working that out. So I gave a bit of a brief introductory at SCRR. We, I think at this point, all are familiar with our organization's mission and vision, and we absolutely love the ways in which you all here are contributing to the uplifting of best practices that support renewal amidst crisis. So I introduced myself and our project and a bit of this series. I want to take a moment to allow you all to introduce yourselves. Many of us, it's so beautiful to see, have been with us all 4 sessions, but there are some new people here as well. And so in the spirit of community, I invite you to introduce yourself in the chat. The role that you play in supporting young folks, and maybe a word or two that captures your week thus far. Wednesday, end of the day. I'm sure we've lived a lot this week. Thank you. Chaotic. I can relate. Thank you for your introductions. Exhausting and worrisome. Encourage you to scroll through the chat and notice who we're here in this space with. Some scattered. Yes, a lot of intense and heavy feelings. We're holding, we're navigating. Thank you for coming as you are. Thank you for acknowledging your state in this moment, elements of your state. Continue to share if you haven't already, to look at who we're in this space with and how we're showing up to this space. Just want to note that emotional, intellectual safety is really important to us as a project, and we believe that the necessary conversations are predicated upon safety and bravery, vulnerability and honesty. And so we want to just say a word about that and hope that we are all cognizant of what it might require to keep ourselves safe and one another as a community as we engage in this dialogue. I'm going to offer a land acknowledgement and a very brief grounding. And then after that, we're going to spend much of our time today building connection across the practices that we've been exposed to. As well as we'll learn a few more, or if you already are familiar with them, we'll experiment or practice a few new self-attuning practices. And then we'll close. And so anyone feel interested in reading the land acknowledgement for us? I'll read it out loud. I invite you to just kind of settle into this moment, into your body. As I share words, I invite you to maybe recite them in your own mind's eye. Our journey begins with the acknowledgement that we, as displanted diasporic people, often result of historical force, reside on unceded sacred indigenous land, past, present, and future. We offer this land recognition in solidarity with the indigenous peoples of Turtle Island in the effort and deliberate intention towards decolonization. We recognize the historic colonialism and ongoing colonialism that has led to the present day circumstances where land acknowledgements are offered in place of land. Since our activities are shared digitally to the internet, let's also take a moment to consider the legacy of colonization embedded within the technology, structures, and ways of thinking we use every day. We're using equipment and high-speed internet not available in many indigenous communities. The technologies that are central to much of our work leave significant carbon footprint, contributing to change in climate that disproportionately affect indigenous peoples worldwide. I invite you to join us in acknowledging all of this, as well as our shared responsibility to make good of this time and for each of us to consider our roles in reconciliation, decolonization, and allyship. We also acknowledge that this country would not exist if it weren't for the free enslaved labor of Black people. We honor the legacy of the African diaspora and Black life, knowledge and skills stolen due to violence and white supremacy. While the movement for justice and liberation is building and we are witnessing the power of this people, many are still met with violence and even death. We honor also the contributions of immigrants seeking safety, relief, many of whom provide labor critical to this country's thriving. In honor of the historical and present-day legacy of folks often unrecognized, I invite you to take a deep cleansing breath. Moment of pause. If you're familiar with the indigenous land that you reside on, also an invitation to share that in the chat. I'm in Oakland, California, unceded Ohlone land. Today's collective settling in, collective arriving is going to be brief. It's just 3 stretches or homecomings into our body. And so I invite you to engage however feels comfortable to you. If you first find a seated position that brings you some ease. Maybe do a little wiggling so that your feet touch the ground if possible. And so the first is just, if you imagine your foot like this, you're just gonna roll onto your toes, pressing into the ground. And then slowly rest your foot back onto the ground, ball to heel. So we're just gonna rock on our feet back again from heel to ball to toe, pressing in as firmly as we can, as firmly as accessible to us. Slowly, I encourage as well, feel a stretch in our calves and our ankles. Maybe pick up a little speed, holding onto the firmness, just rocking back and forth, planting our feet onto the ground, making contact with our toes, our heels, toes and our heels. So the next stretch I invite is in our shoulder area. I have my hands planted on my lap, and it's just pushing your chest out and shoulders back. Maybe we do this with breath. So inhaling in as we kind of cat-cow, shoulders forward, arching our spine, feeling the stretch, letting our heads kind of hang. And inhale as we lunge forward with intention, with strength. Inhale as we come back. Your own pace now, maybe 2 more times, bringing some movement, some warmth, some circulation to our spine, our torso, our hearts. And the last and final collective stretch together, if you can, hands up, reaching for the sky. Allow your fingertips to kind of stretch above you as high as you can. Interlocking your hands if you can. Arching over like a rainbow to your right. Exhaling. Inhaling as we stretch over to our left. Exhaling once you arrive. Maybe 3 more times at your own pace. Inhaling to the right. Exhaling to the left. Allow some. Take whatever else you need in your body, maybe shake a bit. Thank you for trusting that guidance of my words as we find some movement, some warmth, some homecoming in our body. I have felt very outside of my body in the last week. And so sometimes I need community to encourage me or remind me to come home to it. However that felt for you, I invite you to share in the chat. Maybe what your relationship with your body has been like in the last few days as well. I'd be really curious to think about and hear. So I'm going to offer a bit of a recap of our 3 previous sessions, and I would really love, this space is about integration. It is, much of the time we've spent together have been really respected clinicians coming in and sharing some of their favorite practices with us. And so a lot of our time together so far has been receiving, has been kind of listening and possibly reflecting personally or on our own a bit of what we have heard. And so this space today is really about speaking it out loud and making connections and thinking about integration and barriers to accessing these practices out loud. So with Jen, our first clinician, we were able to think about the ventral vagal system or nervous system and really identify what it feels like when we are in a state of arousal. What happens for us internally, what happens to our thought process, how are we thinking and feeling once we're in an activated state. And then we also together in small groups explored what brings us out of that state, what people, what interactions, what ideas, what practices support us in finding regulation. And so I just want to kind of recall that and invite you in the chat to share what you recall of that session, what has been percolating for you since engaging in that learning with Jen at the beginning of the month. And then we had Danya who joined us, and in Danya's teaching, we really highlighted the ways in which we've been socialized to disconnect our minds from our bodies and actually value our intellect and cognition over our body wisdom and over our connection to the land. And she, through her teaching of brain spotting and that guided practice, we were able to come into the body and really pay special attention to the wisdom of our eyes, right? And the ways our eyes might activate memory, the ways our eyes might activate insight and healing. And so what do you recall from that session? What stood out to you from that session? I invite some dialogue around. And then with Candace, we were able to look at a practice that is incredibly applicable to school settings and this formula of SOTA, right? When we are in an interaction that feels uneasy for us, or when we begin to feel our trauma responses percolating, or we feel our conditions responses setting in, how might we stop? Right? How might we stop or slow down and create spaciousness in that interaction? How might we observe what is happening around us to gain more signals of safety, to ease the discomfort and the escalation that we're starting to feel? How might we use our prior knowledge to detach from the immediate moment and create a larger story around what is happening that includes intentions and prior knowledge, right? Also to support feelings of safety and ease. And then how might we awaken? How might we extend empathy to the other person that is causing or participating in this experience that is escalating us? And so those are the practices that have been shared with us so far. And I'm going to be quiet for a moment and allow folks to would love either out loud or in the chat share how you have been maybe incorporating some of these practices into your life so far, into your work, what you've been thinking or wondering or feeling in relation to these practices, or just simply the call to self-attune.
I would say with the brain spotting, and I wrote this in my review, or what's that called?
Yeah, evaluation.
Yeah, that I was surprised that it was effective virtually. You know, a good friend of mine practices it virtually, but I just didn't really understand. But I guess I would like to know more, and this is on me, that there are like brain cells in the eyes. Do you remember she was like their neurological cells in the eyeballs? And that was just crazy to me. And that what we didn't know that for so long, and we could have been doing stuff like this like for so much longer. I don't know. That was crazy.
Yeah, I'm going to get the number wrong, but she said something like 70% of like our brain activity is either connected to or our eyes are central to it, right?
Incredible.
Yeah. I could spiral on this thought, but you know, so much of our work is staring at screens. And even when we're not, we're looking at this artificial light and sleep deprived. And so yes, eyesight, the correlation between our wellness, our insight, our eyesight. Thank you. Thank you, Erica.
I wasn't able to attend all the sessions. Like I wasn't able to attend the mind spotting session, but I really appreciated the first session where she went over the various systems that are activated and just how we were able to get into breakout groups and discuss what that looks like for us. Oh, were we able to get into breakout rooms? I can't remember, but we were able to like actually process that. And that really helped me recognize when I am getting activated, and then I'm able to just settle back and then regroup with myself. And then I'm able to come back into the situation. I also really appreciated the notes from the soda session. Just that whole process of stopping, of observing and detaching. And I really appreciated that aspect of having empathy for the other person. There was a question of when you're, you know, once you have removed yourself from that escalated situation, just observing what are you like at your best, and what is the other person like at their best, and you know, just recognizing that we're both not operating at our best, and how can we transform the state that we're in to a state where we can be operating in a much better position. So I definitely appreciated those two sessions, especially the first and the third one. I didn't get to do the mind spotting, so I don't really know what that was like, but yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Brenda. Yeah. Yeah, I said that for me, the most difficult part of the model that Candace shared is the stopping. And I've been just in looking at the model, I've been more aware of how I'm already at 100 by the time I realize that something is really bothering me, that I need to give it space. And so the stopping, just that alone has been really informative and has been present in my conscious since last week, much more so. I'm going to read a bit of what I see in the chat, and I thank you all for sharing out loud and in the chat in this way. There's some echoing that the brain spotting was really cool. It makes so much sense because the eyes really are the window to the brain. Yes. And to the soul, as Danya said as well, right? That there's so much if we give it the space. There's some amazement at how the sessions feel so long ago, and I concur. I mean, that we're almost in April is wild to me. There's some appreciation for the opportunity to slow down and focus on myself. I've seen that in a lot of the evaluations, that these are things that we hear and that we know on some level as practitioners, but rarely do we actually have the space and the time. And I just want to say that you're prioritizing it, which is absolutely amazing, powerful. Love all of the resources and offerings from each session and presenter. Lovely, lovely. Yeah, if you have ideas or desire to continue these kinds of spaces, please share that in the evaluation. And we really do read over them and try to create programming that is attuned to what it is you want and need. And so if there's a desire for that, we could continue this. Maybe if one more person wants to share any kind of connection or insight or thing that has been coming up for you or that you recall from one of the previous sessions, there's space for that. So today, I am excited about being in conversation with you all regarding a practice that many of you may already be familiar with. It is a practice called RAIN by Tara Brach, and she actually got it from Thich Nhat Hanh. So it's a Buddhist practice, and it is similar in some regards to Soda, but it's also different, or it's slowed down, or it's a little more nuanced. And so before I introduce that practice to us, I want to offer this poem. Does anyone feel called to read it out loud for us? Yes, thank you, Erica.
This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and attend them all, even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still, treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight.
Thank you. Thank you. Rachel Rahman, who speaks a lot about grief and writes a lot about grief, folks may be familiar with her. She speaks often to unprocessed emotion as a coping mechanism, unconscious coping mechanism that prevents us from true connection and fully living. And so I think of her work in reading this poem by Rumi, and invite any thoughts or feelings that come to you as you read this in the chat or out loud.
I really appreciate the emphasis on both and. I think it really speaks to the balance that we need as humans and helps to not have us feeling shameful for how we might be feeling, that we can be, stressed and excited. We can be, both of that. And I know it's something that I talk to not only the kids I work with, but also the staff that I work with to help them recognize that, and I think we see this sometimes a lot, and I deal a lot with loss and grief in my work, that, you can miss and be sad for that someone is gone, but you can also have a sense of relief. It can sometimes be, if you've been in a long-term caring situation or somebody's been really struggling and stuff. I don't know, I think it's important for us to recognize that it's all part of the human experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you so much for that. And what happens when we ignore or suppress the relief we might be feeling, right? It surfaces in different ways. 100%. So to be 100% honest and transparent with folks, I was originally thinking about, I'm going to pair a practice for each letter of this process, right? It is steeped in Buddhist philosophy and heavily connected to meditation. And meditation can be interchanged with the word mindfulness, right? Which is also interchanged with the word self-attuning, in my perspective, for sure. But it is a way of offering or extending. And before you can offer and extend, you need to cultivate compassion, loving kindness towards yourself in all totality. And really, until you're able to do that, it becomes quite difficult to do it for others, especially those that are a little prickly. And so this practice, RAIN, is first and foremost recognizing. It is for me, in my experience, RAIN has been really useful in noticing my thought process or supporting my thought process. I can, especially when I am under a lot of stress, when I'm under-resourced, I notice that the quality of my thoughts really become impaired. They become low vibrational, they become deficit, rooted in deficit, they become shorter, truncated, they spiral. And so this practice of RAIN, very first step in it, which is recognizing, has been instrumental for me. And like I said earlier, kind of the hardest part of it all. And so recognizing is really calling us to notice what is happening right now. What is happening in my mind, in my physical body? What am I thinking and feeling? What am I sensing? Without any judgment, without any story, my feet are cold. My stomach feels like angry butterflies, right? It's just noticing or recognizing. And then the second part of RAIN, the second step in the process, is allowing. It's allowing it to just be. And I love how I heard shared and expressed that the judgment or the shame or the guilt we might feel in relation to a thought or a feeling can often get in the way of us actually experiencing it so that we can process it. Right? You got to feel it in order to heal it, is something I've heard again and again, which is absolutely has rung true for me in my life, in my own healing journey. And I've seen the young people and educators I work with. So the second step in it is accepting, it's acknowledging it, it's understanding our own compulsions, our tendencies, right, as barriers to fully acknowledging a thought or a feeling or an experience. And then there's investigate. So I love this idea of wonderment, right? Without judgment, without intention for a specific outcome, how are you able to gently pose question and curiosity towards that feeling or that thought? And then the last step in it is nurturing with loving kindness. How can we bear witness, right? How can we witness and hear as a loving friend the experience that we're having? So this is the ways in which we're extending self-care. This is the way we're reauthoring the story, the way that we're creating boundary, maybe, right, around how it's entering into our lives and our work and our cognition or our body experience. And so I have two practices that I want to offer today. The first is a guided meditation or opportunity for some mindfulness with a bit of, with some layers. And so our mindfulness practice today is intended to really support us in noticing the quality of our thoughts. And so as we are, I'm just going to give a little bit of a preface for it right now, as we are engaged in the process, I'll be kind of guiding us through some thought. We will be noticing whether our thoughts are, where our thoughts are coming from, and we'll be naming them as they arise. And so I'll give us some tool for that. And then after that, we will have an opportunity to do a little reflection. And then, so we're focusing on the recognizing and allowing with that practice, and then investigating and nurturing with a love letter to ourselves and some more inquiries there in conversation, meaning making, all along the way. So a bit of preface for what I'm going to offer to us now. Are there any thoughts, feelings, questions, wonders about this practice, Rain? Any familiarity with it already? Okay, so you can turn your camera off for this and just as comfortably as possible, find a seat in your chair. I'll give you a second to do that. And close your eyes if that feels accessible for you, but that's absolutely not necessary in this practice. What you will need are access to your hands. And so you close your eyes if you choose. You can also focus, if not on your breath, the sound of life bubbling up around you. And pay notice to your feet. It's your breath to the rise and fall of your chest. Notice the temperature in your body. Does any part of your body feel cold or hot or neutral? Pay notice to your posture. Can find some length in your chest. Drop your shoulders. Allow your eye sockets to soften. Your jaw to unclench. Focusing on your breath, allow it to deepen. And slow its pace a bit. As you're making effort to focus on your breath or the surrounding sounds of life happening outside you, notice when a thought comes up. Just notice, and if you can, send it on a little leaf down a river. Return your focus back to either your breath or life happening around you, the sounds of life happening around you. If your focus pulls away from your breath, if that's what you're focusing on, or life, sounds of life happening around you, if it's a past thought, if it's a thought that exists in the past, I invite you to squeeze your left hand. So anytime a thought that is past centered arises, as we're trying to focus on our breath right now, squeeze our left hand and say past. Anytime a future thought arises, I invite you to squeeze your right hand and say future. So we're settled into our body. We're focusing on our breath, the rhythm, the sound, the sensation. Focusing on the cleansing aspect of our breath, the circulation, possibility. Anytime a thought that arises that's past centered, squeeze your left hand. It's future centered, squeeze your right hand. After noticing and squeezing past or future, return to your breath. This practice is teaching us how to be curious about what our mind is doing. Whenever you become distracted by a thought, return to your breath. Adding a layer of inquiry. Very briefly, if we can name it. If we can't name it, then just say thinking, and this is to your mind, right? If the thought that arises is planning, say planning. If it's remembering, fearing, wanting, struggling, judging, or spacing out. As the thought arises, name it to yourself. Thinking, planning, future tripping, squeeze your right hand. Back to the past, left hand. And return to your breath. Continuing noticing, sending the thoughts as you name them down the river, on the leaf. Come back to our breath. You take a deep and collective, long sip of breath in, allowing it to fill our bodies fully, suspending it at the crown of our head and releasing out our mouth. One more deep, long, slow, collective sip of breath in, filling our bodies, and exhaling. And open your eyes if they're closed. Raise your gaze. Maybe look at the four corners of the room that you're in. Find windows, door. You come back to this and notice, name what that experience was like for you. What you noticed about your thoughts when given 5 minutes to focus on your breath.
I definitely felt relaxed, like the point of, wanting to fall asleep. But, and I know that I judge so much all day long. So I had that naming, but then there was a sound that like warmed me. And so I was like, well, what's the opposite of judging? Did you say a word that was like that? That would be the
No.
opposite of judging? No.
No, like a acceptance.
Yeah, but just like I heard my coworker and I'm like, oh, I love her, like that voice makes me go like that.
Yes. Yeah, like an embrace and a magnetism towards openness.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah, beautiful. Beautiful noticing. Yeah. Did you find yourself, so Eric, you found yourself judging. Did you find yourself in the past or the future much?
I thought maybe I would see a difference, like, oh, one was so much more than the other, but maybe a little more past. Yeah, but gosh, it's so many thoughts go through your mind. It's just hard to like squeeze for each one.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. I'd love to hear what the experience was like for more of us. I've never used my hands, and squeezing thoughts while meditating was illuminating. Yes. Took a while to settle as I had to rush out for work. Okay, once I started noticing that I was able to focus, I spent time split between past and future. Yes. Maybe a reaction on Zoom or in the chat. How many of us were in the past a lot? Leaning towards the past. And with the past, then adding the layer of noticing. Am I reliving? Am I wishing or longing? Am I judging? How about the future? How many of us spend a lot of time future tripping? Combo. Wondering. Worrying. Too much future tripping. My therapist literally makes me put my hand right here. I do a lot of past and future. And I've started doing it in conversation with others now. But I think speaking to the ways that we're incorporating the somatic experience too, right? When we're noticing that we're squeezing either the right or the left hand, past or future, right? Yes. I found that practice in this book that I'm really, really loving. I don't know if we can see it. It's called The Gift of Our Compulsions, a revolutionary approach to self-acceptance and healing. There's so many wonderful, and I'll send the title of the book out to folks. There's so many wonderful practices in here that illuminate the ways in which our mind, the directions and the quality of our thought and the directions in which our thoughts go. And it's so many beautiful practices that really support coming back to home. And that's the way she frames this throughout, is a homecoming. And in the homecoming, we find this wellspring of joy and happiness. And that is really our full selves, that only our full selves can provide us. And so she says that we spend so much of our day in a story, right? That we're not actually present for what is. And the story is built from birth, definitely, right? Rooted in messages that we receive all around us and within our family of origin. And a lot of the core memories are formed in adolescence and in our teenage years. And so that's, quite powerful that many of us are working with young people that are right in the midst of forming those core memories. And so quite, I thank you for engaging in that with me, however was accessible for you. It was my first time speaking it out loud, though I've practiced it myself quite a bit. And so I want to give us some time to, I'm going to stop sharing my screen right now, but a few minutes to journal. And there's some kind of layered questions within the journal. And so I'm going to share the link of the journal, the collective journal, in the chat right now. You can definitely do it on your own paper if you want, but this is a great way to kind of build understanding, collective understanding, and name our common experiences in an anonymous way. So the link to the collective journal is in the chat. And so the first layer of questioning is just like, what were you noticing? What words, images, or sensations bubbled up for you? And what information might you have been receiving from your body, right? A call back into our body. And then were you more compelled by the past or the present or the future? Were any of us able to be in the present? Actually, we haven't given space to that question yet. And then exploring the way these themes surfaced for us in the practice, the planning, the fearing, the remembering, the wanting, the struggling, the judging, and the spacing out. So I'm going to give us 4 minutes to journal, and then we'll come back to some conversation. Take about 30 seconds to finish up your thought. If you're finished, I invite you to read over these experiences. They're so relatable. All right. I'm not going to share my screen right now, but I do want to kind of elevate some of the wonderings and experiences that surfaced in the chat and give space for anyone to unmute and share a bit of what you were reflecting upon in your writing. I see some great questions and wonderings here and a lot of relatable experiences. There's this wondering here if the anxiety is a bit of future tripping, right? If thoughts, thinking in the future is correlating to anxiety or experiences with anxiety. And I've definitely heard that to be true, is that there's a correlation is anxieties of the future, and depression quite often can correlate to a lot of thinking in the past. I spoke to the quality of our thoughts when we're feeling low resourced at the beginning, and was sharing, that's been my experience in the last week for sure. And I see that echoed in folks' journal entry here, is that after having an incredibly activating week, that it was hard to settle on anything. Not, a sound was coming quickly, a feeling is coming quickly, a thought's coming quickly, and oftentimes many of them can be like not full, right? Not fully acknowledging the sound, but quickly noticing it, or not fully acknowledging the feeling, but noticing that it's there. And so I see that heavy in the journaling. And so we want to give folks an opportunity to break into groups of 4. And you'll be in a group of 4, and we'll have about 10 minutes in the group. And I want us to, if we can, discuss what surfaced for us. And so this is giving even more space to your experience in that practice, the experience of making effort to focus on our breath, right? The experience of noticing when thoughts arise, the effort to send the thought gently on its way rather than attached to it, right? Also, what we did was we named the thought. Is it a past thought? Is it a present thought? And then adding layering onto that thought around whether it is desire, it is regret, it is of struggle, it is of judgment. And so now you will see an invitation to join into a small breakout group to give some space to exploring what that experience was like for you, and what came up in your journaling. And if you want to stay in this larger group, if it's not accessible for you right now to be in small group conversation, that is absolutely an option. So I thought it would be quite powerful to possibly write a love letter to our compulsion or our conditioned tendency. And so with our remaining time, I would love it if we could spend either in the collective journal or on a piece of paper some time writing a love letter. And I'll share the components of the love letter in just a second, but want to offer this quote and example of a love letter here. So Thich Nhat Hanh says, a real love letter is made of insight, understanding, and compassion. Otherwise, it's not a love letter. A true love can produce transformation within us. Some letters may take a whole of our lifetime to write. And so an example, grief, I say, come in, sit down, I have tea. There is honey. This will take as long as it takes. A few layers that I would like to kind of add on to that example is what wisdom does your compulsion or your conditioned tendency hold, right? Are there ways in which it has protected and supported you, right? How is that to-do list or that judgment protected you at different points in your lived experience? And what might you ask of it? And so here is my love letter for my fear of inadequacy. My dear and mighty fear of inadequacy, I see you, I hear you, I feel your relentless force. Thank you for all of the ways you have pushed me to be of value to my community. I ask that you see my effort and walk with me and not against me. I ask that you honor my pace as we work in purpose and in love. So I'm having the experience, well, there, you can see it in this letter. And so I would love us to, if possible, take a few minutes playing with this. And you don't have to include every component of this letter, the wisdom, the ways in which it's protected you, and what it might ask, or what you might ask of it. But if you can, there's the invitation, and I'm going to play a bit of music and invite us to write for 3 minutes. And so yes, I will type the name of the book into the chat in just a second, but I want to offer this closing practice. And it is something I've done with us maybe before, but it is a self-holding practice. And so if you can't stay, invite you to just find comfort once again in your seat and notice your feet on the ground. I like to always begin settling in this way. It's just acknowledge the ground beneath me and know it's here for me. I am not alone. I am with Earth always. Find your hands at heart center. Create some sound, some warmth, some energy by rubbing your hands together. Pay notice to the sounds, the sensations. We pick up the speed a bit, pick up the pace. And in your next deep inhale, you're going to hold each side of your head with either hand. Inhale and hold. Suspend your breath. Exhale out your mouth. Feel the sensation, the warmth, the vibration you created. With your next inhale, take your right hand to forehead, left hand to heart center. And exhale out your mouth. Next breath to your craniosacral area behind your head, at the nape of your neck. Left hand to your solar plexus. Inhale. Exhale. Last breath, right hand to your belly, left hand to your forehead. Inhale. Suspend, maybe the deepest breath you've taken all day. Exhale. And wiggle your toes, shake your hands, smile. Thank you all so much. Truly